heading into the action. We're finally getting ready for it. Goodbye, desk. Bye, bye. I don't know if you guys heard that one. They were all saying bye as well. But we're going to be heading into the game shortly. The Shock versus the Atlanta Reign. And yeah, I kind of decided to inject a bit of the history into it back in 2019 when the Shock actually did get upset by the Atlanta Reign. Kind of a similar situation to what we're seeing right now, but not really. But still, I mean, there's some stakes into it with the knockouts. And as you saw from the desk as well, kind of went through the scenarios. It's very complicated. It's like rocket science to me. But there's plenty of different opportunities that the Atlanta Reign, you know, they've got to win. What is it, with a 2-map lead essentially?
Okay. Whoa. At worst, they can drop a map. Let's put it like that, right? At the very worst scenario for the Atlanta Reign, they can drop one single map across this
That's a great way
series.
To put it, actually.
And even that doesn't keep their own fate in their hands. That means that it goes to tiebreaker, and I don't want to be involved in some crazy 4-way tiebreaker behind the scenes. Whoever's job that is, by the way, on the Overwatch League backend side, God bless them, because that seems like it would be a tricky scenario to untangle. But I know that the Atlanta Reign have already been preparing for this as well. They knew that this scenario was going to arise because it was the most likely outcome that they would have to essentially clean sweep the San Francisco Shock to be able to grant their own position, to guarantee their position in the May Melee knockouts. And I know that because I was listening recently to an interview from Gator as well, when he was doing an interview with Yiska of GG Recon. And Yiska was asking him, are you worried about the Shock? They always seem to have that next level. And Gator just said pretty calmly, he said, they're going to think they have a next level. But when we hit them with a couple of maps and they end up losing at the beginning, then we'll see where they're at. Let's take a look at the Shock starters, though, because these guys definitely know how to get themselves out of situations like that. And most of the time, they don't even go down at the beginning. There's Super, he's yawning coming into this. Oh, what? Another game against the Gatekeepers? Yeah, no problem. 1 and 2, we'll easy beat them.
Another day in the office, isn't it, for these guys? I mean, they do look hungry for the win. It's scary how good the Shock have looked from one week to the next. Obviously, coming off that close defeat of the Houston Outlaws, this is a team that has come into it now with quite a bit to prove. You know, they're going to showcase, or at least try to now, that they are still the top dogs. And you can see across the board there, the players lining up. And Super, this guy's been seeing a lot of playtime as well over the course of it. Normally the playtime is, you know, split across both him and Smurf, but this time been seeing the limelight a little bit more. Now on the other side of things, got the Atlanta Reign. That's going to be their opposition. They're going to be rolling out with probably the most deadly aspect of this roster, which is their DPS line. And this time they're going to be opening up with Kai and Pelican. These guys can be monstrous when they're on fire.
They certainly can. Last time when they began on Busan, most recently, Pelican was in on that Brigitte role with Massa taking a sub out. This time around, though, Pelican in on DPS, and Pelican and Kai really can be monstrous, but that indicates to me as well that they want the best possible roster in to brawl against the San Francisco Shock. And that, I think, is going to define this series. It is so important that Atlanta get out to a hot start here. Their win rates on Control and on Assault have not been great so far this year. They've been okay, but Shock themselves, the former gods of Control and hybrid maps, have been slipping up recently too. The San Francisco Shock have got a 50% win rate on Control so far this season. They're 2 and 2. That might not sound too bad, but when you're the Shock, that's actually some significant weakness being shown here. So Atlanta need to capitalize on that and bring home Oasis early. You cannot afford, as the Atlanta Reign, to lose this first map. It already sets you off on such a bad footing.
Yep, it's all going to come down to that. The teams are ready. They're going to be heading into the action shortly. Hyped up, ready to go. Gators, what is he tossing around? Doesn't look up close to my screen here.
Is it a lime or something? It's probably just a tennis ball of some description, but it could be a piece of fruit. Who knows? He's just keeping his hands warm, probably. I want to talk a little bit about the map pool here as well before we dive into Oasis, because map 3, Kings Row, map 4, Havana, extremely good rush maps where the Atlanta Reign can flex into what they're excellent at. The map after this, Volskaya, that's going to be difficult for them, which is why I keep returning to this idea that Oasis is a must-win for them. They can't really guarantee themselves a victory on Volskaya. It's a little out of their comfort zone, but the Atlanta Reign could come out with a very good win on Oasis, Kings Row, Havana, and seal up this series if their rush comps are as good as people have been speculating that they are. The Shock, though, are no pushovers.
It's going to be a good match, that's for sure. A lot of eyes going to be on both these teams to see how they're going to be performing here. A lot of expectations. But here we go. Getting ready to clash. You can see it's not going to be any Symmetra business. Both teams just going to be opting to get to the point roughly around the same time. The Shock holding onto the high ground. You can see the forward positioning here by FD God. He's just trying to deny essentially Massa in case Massa tries to boot him down to the low ground. Just holding that forward position.
Two alternative rollouts here. One that puts Gator on the low ground where he can get hit by Striker on this off angle. But Atlanta Reign are really trying to take control of the point, giving Shock the high ground. Super looks like he wants to drop and try and engage. Nero looking for a wall as well to isolate Gator. So far, not too much happening though.
Eventually a drop down here. Super falling quite low, has to back off. No picks going their way. The Ice Wall not going to be working out. Super so low. Yep, that's going to force out the Immortality Field and the Amp Matrix just to give them a bit of space. But the Atlanta Reign, they have an advantage now. They have a much better Amp Matrix coming out. Can they get any kills off the back of this? Anyone poking their heads out? No, the Shock want to be going aggressive into them. The Blizzard's laid down. Striker using that Deadeye just to force them back, but Nero ends up falling here, losing a consistent core piece of their damage. Striker so low, he will go down. And FD God with the sound barrier, not going to be finding too much, but he does find the kill onto Pelican. The boop comes through, but at this point they've lost far too many pieces. The Immortality Field comes through, just to save Super for a few brief seconds, but not before he eventually goes down. And the Atlanta Reign walking away with the initial team fight after a very, very long start.
Good beginning for Atlanta and such patient, disciplined play from both sides there. There were multiple ults online before any player had really taken more than 50% of their health down. The Shock is going to engage with another Amp Matrix. Iris with one of his own too that he can respond with. So much of it is going to come down to these petite. Unless Super lands Earth Shatters like that. That's forced out the Immortality Field for both sides actually. And that ult from Nero is what seals it up. The Blizzard invested so much earlier than Pelicans.
They try to prioritize and put a lot of pressure onto Super, but they weren't able to get the freeze off they were looking for. Shock hunting for any sort of stagger kills here, just to buy them a bit more time. But now returning back, getting positioning. Yep.
I just want to correct myself there as well, because obviously Pelican used his in the first initial fight, and Nero going down at the beginning gave him the advantage in that. So that's just great allocation of resources from Shock as they went back into this engagement. And now Atlanta are going to be pushing back through. They have speed boost Deadeye if they can get Kai into a good position, but Shock are making a fight for every inch of this high ground.
Self-destruct with the Deadeye. They're looking to try and force positioning. Striker caught. Yep. That's the self-destruct going to be taking Striker out, and that one pick-off means that the rest of the Shock just going to be tumbling. One after the other here. Nero just hunting with the stray icicles, but ultimately not going to be amounting to too much here. Reign flipping it back over now, and they are going to be in control of the high ground.
Both teams doing a great job of utilizing those small advantages and turning them into a full team fight win. Iris is slightly ahead when it comes to the Amp Matrix, but I don't think it's going to make a huge deal. What is that shadow? Okay, bold from Gator, doesn't find anything. And Choyobin's in the backlines here already, actually. Distracting Pelican. What?
Oh my goodness. The old bait and switch, huh?
A 4K from Massa and then a boot from Hawk as well? He must have been just hanging around in the high ground there. A rare smile on the face of Massa, normally a stoic Finn. What was this replay? Yeah,
let's take a look at this quick. Yeah, I mean, that is a little bit of miscommunication. I think FD God is usually the one who needs to boot them off that corner preemptively, but the fight continues now. And Matrix from on the high ground. Shock are fighting into a disadvantaged position. Massa again holding onto the high ground, just putting in that spam damage. Super falling a little bit low here. Half HP, Deadeye from across the map here. Kai looking for the opportunity. Nero goes down. Nero was hunting for the Blizzard, trying to get it aggressively into them. And it has set themselves up for a couple of these kills now as the positioning was gained. They split the Atlanta Reign up. And despite losing Nero early on into this team fight, they are finding the pickoffs.
That was so close for the San Francisco Shock. They had one opportunity to convert that around. Nero must have felt disastrous when he got caught there in the Blizzard animation, taken out by Kai's Deadeye. And Kai has been having a stellar round so far. Atlanta find themselves at 99% staring at the Titans. At eye level so far, if not the slightest bit above them. But Atlanta have still got it all to do. There's no big ults to work with here. Until they get Iris's and Matrix online, it's just a neutral fight, and they have to worry about this. Super looked like he wanted to go for the flank there just for a moment.
Yeah, he's teasing the idea, the concept of it. He wants to try and bait them onto the point, potentially go for a flank shatter. The Atlanta Reign, they play patiently, and now they've built up the Amp Matrix, another boop, but it's not going to be getting any kills. Still, the shatter comes through, and Super will find at least one target as Hawk is going to be laying down, but it's going to get back straight up. Now the fight going forwards. Gator so low, getting chunked down as Super's going to be cleaving through him. Self-destruct into the corner. Super pressured. He had to turn his shield in time for it. And that's going to be enough damage put in now. It's going to be the even fight. Kai falling quite low. Deadeye not getting too much work. Striker has to roll backwards to Blizzard to try and gain a bit of space. Kai with the Deadeye as well. Holding, desperately trying not to get caught out of position. The Shock finding it hard to get even a foothold into here, and Super with the pile driver not getting anything done. Still, Striker is alive and putting in the damage from afar. The Peacekeeper putting in so much work. The Hawk ends up eating Nero's Blizzard. That could have been critical.
What a play there. And in the meantime, Kai is just staying alive, doing consistent damage throughout this team fight. FD God falls in the Atlanta Reign with Gator coming back in on the hamster. They're trying to turn this one around. The beat from Massa is just too late to catch Gator. Is that going to be critical? It doesn't look like it. The Shock are losing players left, right, and center.
Holy moly. The Shock have just lost too many players into this. Super will fall, and round number 1 goes to the Atlanta Reign here. That was ridiculous. And the real kill that I think saved them in that was FD God going down on 96% to his beat. Potentially could have matched the Atlanta Reign then and just dragged it out that little bit further, but he got split off, separated. I think it was Hawk who ended up collecting the kill. Just one tiny mistake. That's all it takes. That's how close these teams are fighting.
So many different swings in momentum throughout that round, though. It could have been anyone that took it. I mean, huge plays. The Massa 4K boop, Hawk eating the Blizzard, so many picks from Kai. Enormous plays to keep Atlanta Reign ahead there, but just by an inch. The San Francisco Shock, they are looking mighty angry. But at the moment, Atlanta Reign are matching them. Absolutely going toe-to-toe with the beast of the Overwatch League right now. San Francisco Shock with Super in on a rush comp.
Yep, and now we see the Reinhardts in play once more. Both teams going to be meeting each other at the point. It's a decent amount of time. 11, 10 seconds now until the point unlocks, but the fight is going to be happening a little bit sooner than that. The Ice Walls come through, and that's going to be trying to lock up these players. Troy taking a bit of damage. Nobody really pressuring Kai. And look at that, Flashbang comes over, it catches onto Super. There was no peel for him. Hawk frozen up though. Kai hunting for these headshots desperately. Troy will get demech the charge from Super as he tries to at least make some sort of outlandish play to turn it. Not enough. The tanks fall. And so do the Shock's chances of taking that team fight.
If it's Massa that's calling the rotations here for Atlanta, or whoever it is, they're a genius. They really are. They caught the San Francisco Shock completely there, pushing around with a little off-angle flank from Kai, and then catching with Pelican's incredible Maywall everybody on the San Francisco Shock. And then they just got squeezed completely. How do you manage to pin the Shock into a corner on a circular control point? Really, really well played by Atlanta Reign in that opening engagement. And because they flipped the point so early on and then pushed their advantage off the back of Iris's Amp Matrix, they now sit at 40%. The silver lining for the Shock is that Violet has his own.
Amp Matrix goes down super early. The wall doesn't find any sort of target that they're looking for here. Gotta be careful. Super falling low, and that's gonna mean the Immortality field. But now the Deadeye from Kai. Gonna be holding this one. Speed boost around the corner. The shield gets destroyed here. Gator ends up using his Earth Shatter. A couple of players going down here, but Gator being frozen up, pinned against the wall as well, against the tree, I should say. Still the Shock trying to find this, but nobody is pressuring Kai. He's just putting in so much work. The Icebox now forced out of Nero, and the rest of the Atlanta Reign find it. Still, Nero with the Stray Icicle, not enough to try and turn the fight. The Atlanta Reign, 72% and counting.
And again, it's these rotations, Brent. They are so good. The San Francisco Shock are just getting pinned between a rock and a hard place. Kai is getting so much value out of these flanks as the rest of the Atlanta Reign. Essentially, they're like sheepdogs, shepherding the rest of the Shock into the waiting jaws of Kai.
Another Amp Matrix, but this time blocked by the Ice Wall of Nero. Trying to lead this one in. Super hunting for the Shatter. Look at the pressure he's applying to Gator. With Gator down, he might not even need to use the Shatter. Just going to go for the charge here as the overtime comes up. A lot of faith in their team now to just clean up the rest of these players. But the Shock finally going to be able to get at least a couple of percentage points on the board in this round. They just about saved this map.
Yeah, that is a close one. Losing that in that fashion to the Atlanta Reign would have been disastrous, but the Shock keep themselves alive. And you've got to remember, with control maps, being in control of the point is half the battle already. So now Shock themselves are at an advantage. They can always see where the Atlanta Reign are rotating to, immediately pivot over and match them. But Atlanta, what a wall! Fantastic from Nero.
Yep, and they're going to be finding that one. It forces ultimates out. The Earth Shatter comes through. It only connects onto Hawk Super. Caught up out of position. He's going to get taken down by Kai. This fight has gone disastrous for the Shock. They're so split up right now. The players, the Atlanta Reign, they recognized what they could do, and they rotated fast around the left-hand approach. And off the back of that, they pince around. They pierce into the Shock, and now the overtime ticks over. I don't think anybody's going to be able to touch this one. FD God might be able to get a body onto the point, but he just has to avoid this Deadeye. He's going to get taken down by Hawk. Troy now, straight up into the skybox. It's not over just yet, but FD God did go down with the beat once more.
You say it's not over. It feels inevitable, inexorable. The Atlanta Reign are just storming through, and they take our first map of Oasis.
Holy
a masterclass.
moly.
A rush masterclass from the Atlanta Reign. Phenomenal stuff.
What a scary team the Atlanta Reign's looking as well. And this isn't the same Shock as we were witnessing a couple of weeks ago. This is a team that has tried to work on a lot of their perceived weaknesses. But the Atlanta Reign have come out swinging. And Josh, you mentioned it, you know, when you were recalling back to the interview with Gator and what he was saying about, you know, the perceptions of this game. A lot of people were going to be expecting the Shock to come out swinging and maybe coming out with a sweep. But winning that map, absolutely massive for the Atlanta Reign.
You've got to remember, Atlanta here, they were determined to win 3-0. That is what's burned into their brain. And what struck me so much is that they were so confident that if they can start hot, they can carry that momentum forwards. It is hard to get Shock on a weekday. I don't even think this is a weak or a rough day for the San Francisco Shock. But Atlanta Reign completely outplayed them there in our opening map of Oasis. That is a negative win rate for Shock on control maps so far this season.
Yeah. These plays just echoing in our minds as well. Huge moments from the Atlanta Reign, and we're going to find out after the break if they can keep this momentum going and potentially upset the juggernauts of the Shock. Don't go anywhere.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G network. Set your sights on the competition with T-Mobile. The Overwatch League is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of the Overwatch League, and by IBM, the official cloud and AI partner of the Overwatch League.
All expectations really being upset here, and now as we take a look at the power rankings of IBM Watson, you can see a couple of these players from the Shock side, Nero and Striker, sitting at 16-19, moving a couple of places down actually, and we'll see just where they land as well after this week concludes. But overall, a pretty hot start for their opposition, the Atlanta Reign, leading this series 1-0.
Yeah, and when you take a look at essentially, you know, Striker, Nero being in the top 20 DPS, that might make you think, oh, well, of course, they'll commit to this, right? We're going into our next map, Volskaya. Maybe we'll see Striker on the long-range hit scan and Nero and Tracer. That is not the case. Neither of these teams have played a game on Volskaya so far this season, but you can read exactly into the kind of comps that they're preparing to play by virtue of their roster that they're fielding right now. Twilight subbing in for Violet, so they've got Twilight and FD got in the backline for that Ana Brig combination, and then they've got Violet subbing in for Nero on DPS. This has previously indicated that they're going to play McCree, and Smurf comes in for Super as well, indicating that they're going to play a lot more of that double bubble with him on the Winston. But this is strange, because Violet has normally been playing McCree. McCree has not been that popular on Volskaya so far. It's normally Ashe that gets played here, if teams are going for the double bubble or the poke comps. On the other side as well, the Atlanta Reign have made some swaps, moving Pelican over to Massa's position, so he's going to be playing the Brig for them. So both of these teams are going to hardcore commit the double bubble here.
Yes, on Volskaya. I mean, I think the teams have kind of figured out that almost the rush composition's not really worth doing. I think too many weaknesses get opened up against like different poke compositions. It's
definitely
such a wide and open map that when you're trying to break through, it seems to be that's the default that the teams are running. But very interesting moves all around. Let's take a look at the map leaderboards presented by Xfinities. Both these teams holding records actually in the top 5. As you can see, the Shock versus Florida and the Reign versus Shanghai.
Yeah, both from the same year as well, 2019. And I want to touch a little bit on the Shock's success from the year after they set this record, 2020. Our previous season, they had an extremely high win rate on Volskaya. It was like 72% on Volskaya. And really what that was based on was getting Ans, who was, you know, formerly on this team, who played the long-range hit scan, and Violet on Zen into the best possible positions to rain damage down from long range. The Shock loved playing poke compositions and just setting their players up to dominate. Now, they don't have that long-range hit scan option anymore, unless Striker wants to play that, which he definitely could, or maybe Glister, you know. They still have some potential to do that. But moving Violet away from Zen and not opting into the Ball, Zen, Ashe, Tracer kind of compositions that we've seen teams run on Volskaya, I'm a little concerned here. The Shock's double bubble has not looked like the best in the league so far, and I fear that they might be moving away from what worked for them in the past. The Violet McCree in particular is unusual for the distances involved on Volskaya here. And remember that this is where they need to kind of reset momentum before we go back to rush.
It's certainly interesting, isn't it? And you can see, I think maybe Hawk might be getting ready for just a preemptive hook or something. Out of the door? No, just teasing us. Gonna be swapping back over, but I agree with you. I mean, it feels like almost a little bit too cute coming out from the Shock, trying to, you know, make some of these players that they've got work in these unorthodox positions. But
and look at the Atlanta Reign. They're going to run the poke composition themselves, so they've decided to go for this. Now a lot of the attention is going to be on Smurf and Striker. That backline is surprisingly diveable of the Brig Zen. When you have a Zarya bubble, you don't have to worry about the Brigitte too much. And there it is, Smurf with the Zarya bubble, tickling the backline, trying to make it difficult for Atlanta Reign to rotate through that left-hand side. But the thing here is as well, they don't have to worry about an Ashe peppering them from a distance. It's only Violet. He can't do the same thing. He can't launch in those dynamites.
Now the one thing that the McCree does do, it stops a lot of pressure. The go button was pressed here for the Shock. They wanted to engage back into the backline. And all set up with the Bionade from Twilight. And that is massive. No ultimate's being used. But the point I was making before the Shock ended up winning that team fight was that Violet on the McCree does stop, I think, a lot of what we see is like a Tracer player setting up in positions for like a dive, a coordinated attempt with their main tank.
Sure, yeah,
it does put a bit of a stop to that.
Violet is going to make the backline a little more tanky of Twilight, FD God, and then Violet. He's going to be able to hold Gator particularly back so that he can't be able to occupy the same level of space. But to me, the real win condition is what we just saw. Twilight's Bionades combined with Smurf and Striker. The Smurf-Striker synergy, we've seen it in the past be god tier. It has to be the same here again.
See just how defensive that backline is. Bubble has to be applied here, and now the nano boost onto Smurf. Great stick. FD gets taken out. Now Violet's on a bit of an island by himself here. Smurf still trying to get a lot of work done. So low, but okay, Gator trying to pressure a little bit too much, gets forced out of position. Now the pulse bomb indoors. Not going to be getting too much here, but long range pressure. Nobody can stop Kai here as he's sending in the dynamite, and he has Bob available.
Smurf at 99% just gets this primal rage up, and Violet pushes them back a little bit with that Deadeye. Manages to find Edison as well. So despite how well Atlanta Reign played that, the San Francisco Shock have stabilized. Atlanta know that they can't maintain that high ground control.
Damn it.
With Edison down and Smurf with a primal. This becomes now exceedingly difficult for them. They just weren't able to get the picks off the back of the poke damage that Kai and Iris were putting down. Having said that though, they don't have to reset all the way to the choke point. They just have to anticipate these dives and avoid them. But that's a huge grab.
Through. Yep, no follow-up though. No one can really follow up onto this. Iris using the Transcendence.
Pulse bomb.
That's a pretty big miscommunication there coming out from the Shock. The fight continues though as Hawk is looking for a target with his own grab. But they have point control. The mines come down. The Shock realize, okay, we're not going to be able to win this team fight. We're going to wait out these ultimates. As the rally just about fades.
Nano on Violet, and he got whip shot into the drink. Unbelievable.
That is pretty absurd. What a play coming out from Pelican to just completely counteract the ultimate. And it's just a matter of time. The Atlanta Reign happily securing up that checkpoint A.
That's why they move him over to Brigitte. Gator again in that interview was saying, Brig in this meta, it's surprisingly mechanically difficult. You've got to be able to hit every whip shot, hit every bash, and be so aware of what you're doing. And now Atlanta, they have a big opportunity here to snowball. If they can catch this kill on Choyobin, not quite. The rally keeps him alive.
Oh my goodness! I thought for a second then that Choi was going to get chunked down, but Striker answers back immediately. The pulse bomb, not even any setup into it, but the bubbles had faded, and that was his go button. They just about hold them off. They did manage to get a tick. The Atlanta Reign with 39% is not terrible, but at least they've stopped them just before it got a little bit out of hand.
This is where Edison and Gator need to be working together to push Striker out of the flank. But Striker's going to be working with Violet. Look at Violet's position. You can just see him on the left-hand side of your screen, putting pressure down on Edison. If you leave the McCree over there with the Brig and with the rest of their team, then the Shock are going to win. They have better positions to fight. So this has to be a slow approach from Atlanta where they push those players out of the left-hand side. And Shock know this. Bionade went through there as well. Smurf in the back line just jumps on top of Iris. That is huge. What a follow-up.
These little pick-offs, just finding these openings with the Bionades just to initiate in and get a pick-off or two, it completely opens it up for the rest of the Shock to get a lot of value done. See Smurf just about getting out alive, so he is going to survive. And the Atlanta Reign still building up these ultimates. They're going to have an opportunity to recontest this, Josh. How do you want to see them approach it? They've got a lot to work with.
Again, it's about pushing Violet out of this position. Violet and Twilight and FD God are all playing on the left-hand side. Having said that, as soon as they try and go through this choke point, there's going to be a nano boost applied to Smurf. He's going to get a huge amount of damage on them and then probably primal them and kill their backline. So this is going to be hard. Here we go, Smurf just tickling them down. Twilight applies the nano boost and this is it, the backline. I mean, what do you do against this?
Okay, they almost burst him down. That was the Discord Orb applied to Smurf. Just going to get disjointed now, but now the grab comes in right as the primal is fading. So much damage being cleaved into them, but no follow-up, no kills happening. In fact, it's the Atlanta Reign who are the ones coming out on top, and the resources they're pouring into Pelican means that there is not going to be any kills going their way. The Atlanta Reign with a big advantage. They absorb the aggression, and now they're coming back in. Let's take a listen in at the Atlanta comms.
오라. 그래. Put it on. Brie.
Nice. Good shit. Nice shot.
Yeah, calm down.
Score 0-2.
As you can see, and as you can hear, very excited about that one. And the Atlanta Reign, obviously, I mean, just, obviously meta-defining comms and communications. McCree. Really just trying to get the focus fire down. But you can tell that, I don't know who it was at the end there, but just saying, calm down, realizing that, we can't get ahead of ourselves against the San Francisco Shock just because we secured, the 1 minute time bank. We got the objectives. Sure, we're performing well, but don't let it get to our heads. We still need to close this out.
But I mean, seriously, this is insanely good from Atlanta. That team fight where Smurf goes forward, builds up Primal, gets Nana boosted. The backline of Iris and Pelican is rock solid. They absorbed all of that aggression, popped their ultimates, and then destroyed the Shock when they tried to commit with the grab afterwards. Yep. Really well played from the Atlanta Reign, both in terms of their offense and their defensive play, absorbing all of that play. Here's Pelican again, and this was the play that defined point A to me. Look at the Nana boost onto Violet, and what a whip shot. On
That
the
is
flank
massive.
as well. That is absolutely crucial. Pelican has been the man of this map so far. He's been dominant from a Brigitte role. What a guy. He just can do it all.
That's absurd. If Violet lets loose there with the Nano boost, who knows how that fight would have gone. From the high ground as well, no one to dislodge him. That whip shot had to hit. Really clutch moment here. Now the Shock are looking to try and again work their way through this choke point. Not running the Zen. Striker's going to get caught out of position. And it's an underrated aspect of it actually. When the Shock are running this kind of composition, when they're not running the Zenyatta, instead of opting for the Ana, it means that there's a little bit less resources applied to Striker for him. No Harmony Orb to win out this fight. Now Shock are really not going down without a fight here. The Bionade indoors. Edison going down. This is such a scrappy engagement here. Remember, the Shock are on the attack. The scrappier it gets, the better it is for them.
It certainly is. Striker's been able to come back into the fight and the DPS mop up 2 final players. And that is monumental. The big picks there with the backline, again, falling for the Atlanta Reign. They're trying to run a poke composition and trying to punish the San Francisco Shock as they came in around the flank. And even though they found the pick on Striker, the Tracer, Iris and Pelican still went down. Not quite fast enough with their defensive rotations and got caught. This is, as Zoe put it, Angie Shock.
Yeah, and these big Bionades from Twilight. I mean, I was discussing the downsides of running the Ana, but definitely some upsides. If you catch a Bionade, as long as your target priority is good, you've got a pretty good shot of it. And look at the Nano boost timing as well. Twilight, 95%. I'm anticipating it's probably going to be applied to Smurf when he tries to engage here.
They always have the option of trying to put it onto Violet, but no, it does go onto Smurf. In the meantime, the DPS fall extremely low, but Gate has been burnt out. Destroyed. Ooh. Nice play from Hawk. Great reactions to eat that pulse bomb. And Striker gets punished for his attempt.
Edison in the back line, the 2K with the pulse bomb. Oh my goodness, that was looking tricky. And it's still not over just yet. Smurf was in the back line and managed to take down Iris, but when the rest of these targets get hunted down, the Atlanta Reign can breathe a sigh of relief. That was looking a little bit shaky indeed. Edison, what a clutch play. Forcing the recall out of Striker and then answering back immediately with the 2K.
Yeah, that is huge. But Shock have still got an enormous time bank. Atlanta can't get ahead of themselves here. For the next fight, at some point, if they're slow and they wait for the Nano boost, Choyobin and Striker will probably have a grab pulse bomb combo too. It depends how quickly the Shock want to engage, but this comp normally plays quite slowly. So as the Shock try and take positions, force Edison out of these priority areas, it's a good opportunity for Shock to close things out.
Violet goes down. That's going to be the volley from Iris. Here we go. Smurf ends up using the Primal Rage here. Does get out the Transcendence, but the Discord Orb means that can't really get too much done. Has to back off with the rest of his team, and because they lost Violet, yeah, they don't want to be taking this fight.
But Brent, crucially, they've forced out the Transcendence from Iris, and Hawk is not running Zarya, so he's not going to have those bubbles to be able to stop a Grav Pulse Bomb combo. So they don't have to worry about that at all. Choyobin and Striker's ults could be used in tandem here with Twilight nano boosting Smurf for the space to just close this out completely. It now comes down to whether Striker can get his ult up in time, I think.
Rally engagement from both these teams. Gonna be looking to make them fight happen. The mine's onto the high ground. Gator just about gets out of his life. He has those shields. Nano boost applied! Smurf jumped straight into it, and he got blown up. The Discord orb was already on him. Smurf gone, and now the Shock are caught behind enemy lines here. They might still want to take this fight. The grab gets sent straight in. Is there going to be any follow-up whatsoever? Post-bomb up into the sky. The damage is immense. Gravitic Flux has to be forced out now. Hawk needs to find a kill or two with it, but they're not getting it picks just yet. Twilight will eventually go down, but nobody can touch the Shock. Just when you think they're out of it, just when you think the fight is done, they battle back and they somehow find a better time bank.
It's all down to positioning. Shock managed to take that left-hand side area, the area that I keep talking about because it's so important for these attacking teams on Volskaya B. Once they have that area and they've pushed Choyobin and their backline onto a high ground at the back area, I mean, that's just... It's such an important position to be able to deny from the defenders. It bunches the Atlanta Rain up into very predictable locations where Choyobin can land a huge grab, and then the follow-up with both damage and the pulse bomb is there. And that's the thing that the Shock were waiting for that entire time. Atlanta did a decent job of ticking down some of the time, but not enough. They now suffer an enormous time bank deficit, despite how well they did on their attack.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds.
They certainly do. And yeah, it's kind of like echoing in my head when we were listening into the Atlanta Rain and them saying, you know, calm down, not trying to get ahead of themselves. And this is why, because the Shock, you never know when they're going to bite back, they're going to fight back. A lot of teams in this position, you know, they might get a little bit rattled at what Atlanta Rain has been showcasing, but not the Shock. They've been in this position many, many times.
4, 3, 2,
Yeah, they are champions, and they have a championship mentality.
defend objective A.
The Atlanta Rain, remember, they absolutely need to win this series, and they can't drop more than a single map. They would love a clean sweep right now, which means converting in these final moments. A pick on Smurf would be gorgeous to start things off. Zarya Bubble's already been used, and Smurf forced to retreat. The backline for the Atlanta Rain, though, was getting pressured really heavily by Striker, and that's another huge Bionade coming out from Twilight. Those have been so crucial for Shock's victory, or at least their performance so far on Volskaya.
Yeah. I mean, it's a massive win condition for them. If Twilight hits the Bionade onto any one of these targets, what a sleep dart. Oh, and they almost comboed up with the damage. That is a dangerous position, but Gator just about rolls out. 15 seconds. Yeah, he does. He's forced to go back. But this is the final fight for Atlanta Rain. Do or die in this scenario. They don't have ults. They've got to come up with something big. Iris needs to find a volley. Something. He's just pumping out the damage, hoping that he connects. The power drive comes through. The shield is there from Choi. Captures it up. Another sleep dart onto Gator. Locks him into the corner here. Gator very low, just trying to take the off angles. But look at this. The nano boost now applied. A lot of damage being put out now onto Smurf. But Smurf stays alive. The peel is there. And despite the best efforts, the Atlanta Rain not quite enough to overcome it. The Shock are going to be holding them just at the choke.
What an embarrassment of riches that the San Francisco Shock have to be able to sub in Twilight, a player who normally isn't even in the active roster. And he just has a performance like that. Every single Bionade was potentially teamfight winning. He had his nano boost up so quickly, less than a minute there to be able to clutch that final teamfight out and apply it to Smurf. And those sleep darts were landing time and again onto Gator to stop the Atlanta Rain and force him to retreat consistently and leave the fight to get those health packs up. A very strong defense from the San Francisco Shock. And Atlanta Rain's slower poke-based composition simply couldn't get into the right positions in time. Perhaps a swap in that situation over to the double bubble would have been better to play a slightly higher tempo play. But that's complete hindsight at this point. Atlanta now have 2 points on the board and only a hope of drawing. A draw here would still be good for them. We said they can't drop more than a map in the series. A draw is not a lost map. That's still fine for their map differential. So a draw here is still extremely good for the Rain.
It is. Yeah, it absolutely is. That's what they're going to be searching for. 3 minutes. You've got to remember, though, the Shock, last time they were attacking, they managed to make it work in a pretty rapid fashion. I think they had about 5 minutes on the time bank, roughly, when they were pushing into checkpoint B, so this time again, opting for this double bubble, and they get called out of position. Again, taking, you can see the control here of this right-hand building.
It was
All
the
shots
backline
gonna be
last
moving
time,
into
Red.
it.
It was Iris and Pelican going down that was just devastating for them. This time, oh, Violet, he'll be wishing he hit that one. Edison gets away with murder.
That is a massive kill to just let slip out of your hands. Sometimes it happens. The flashbang, if somebody was jumping when they're caught by the flashbang in particular, can be pretty hard.
Another sleep.
But that is a great sleep dart, and Twilight has been massive with these sleeps. Consistent over the course of this map. Just able to just constantly lock out Gator when he's been taking these aggressive approaches, and it means that Edison doesn't have anybody to play off. The point's going to get pressured here, but Smurf gets destroyed, and that's an important takeaway from this one, because now they're going to start to contest. They need to start committing some bodies onto the point. Choi goes down, so the Shock now losing their tanks. Not an ideal scenario, but Striker wants to try and at least take a couple of players down with him. Dodges the accretion, still going for the fight, and he's being healed from afar. Twilight just keeping him up as this entire fight is taking place.
Striker's doing work here, eventually gets taken down by Edison, but here's Twilight again with a nano boost applied onto Smurf. He forced out the Transcendence and then separated Iris away from Pelican, jumps onto him. Can the Atlanta Reign stall this out? Another sleep onto Gator, this time with no big follow-up. And the Shock, they're investing ultimates in this to try and turn it around, but I fear it might not have been quite enough.
They did get the Transcendence out, which is an important takeaway, and they have a minute now. A bit of positioning here for Violet as he's just working up, again, up the rafters here with the rest of his team. But now to take complete control of the high ground here. Violet with the Deadeye, holding it, but eventually lets it go. And the positioning of Atlanta Reign has been forced around this corner. It's a very difficult ask for him. He's trying to compete with Kai. Kai has such a long-range advantage when he's playing the Ashe. The Gator now trying to separate Smurf. The bubble gets locked down again. Gator with the mines. Might be looking for an opportunity to use it to stop the Shock from really initiating in. But again, the bubble is off. And now the Primal Rage comes through. Knocked off the edge. Perfect mechanics from Smurf. Wonderful work on the Winston once more. Backs up and now puts his attention into the backline to try and split them apart. The Shock capitalize immediately. The space has been created. Stunned up Smurf so low. But now the nano boost applied. The ult rotations are impeccable. The Atlanta Reign with only a couple of players left standing. Not enough to stand up to the Shock. Great engagement. They took their time with it for sure, but eventually come out on top, taking away Volskaya, bringing the series 1-1.
Atlanta's still looking decent when it comes to non-rush compositions, but the Shock was simply better. Even playing that unconventional style with a McCree when it comes to Volskaya, Violet and Twilight still make it work. The flex supports for this team, by the way. Especially Twilight. What a huge impact he had over the course of this map. Getting subbed in and just owning.
That's why they picked him up. Why they picked him up.
It really is. It really is.
I mean, in the past, there's been the narratives, you know, the Violet typically hasn't liked to play the Ana. And you see exactly, sometimes, if the composition necessitates it, that's why you picked up Twilight. You put him in those scenarios and he just excels. Well, we're going to find out what exactly is going to be happening in the rest of these series after this short break, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, the Atlanta Reign versus the Shock is really heating up now. One map apiece. You don't want to miss it. You don't want to go anywhere. We'll see you on the other side.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G network. Set your sights on the competition with T-Mobile. And by Xfinity, the preferred internet provider of the Overwatch League.
The votes are in. Tune in to the May Melee tournament from May the 6th through May the 8th to earn the Anna Overwatch League home and away skin. So you can link your account on YouTube today. You can see it at the bottom of the YouTube feed. There's the rewards button. Link it up. Again, stop spamming exclamation mark drops. It doesn't do anything. How many ads do we need to run? How many ads do we need to run of Matt doing the close-up weird thing with his face where he's saying, you know, stop it, stop it.
I don't know, Ben. It's like the people don't listen. It's almost, you know, perhaps if I was a smarter man, I might be able to figure out why it happens, but it's almost like they're doing it deliberately to annoy us. I don't know. I can't figure it out. I just can't figure it out.
Yeah, well, there you go. Now you know. No complaining. Let's take a look at our Indeed player resume. It's Troy Hoban. This guy has some accomplishments on him. I mean, with a resume like this, you can walk into any office. You know what I'm saying? He can find a job anywhere. Look at this guy, 2019 Grand Finals MVP, the only 2 times role star for Tank, 2019 to 2020, 2020 MVP finalist, 2020 All-Stars, 2 times Overwatch League champion. He put Super to shame.
He's also one of the players that's really competing this season. If the whole of the Shock roster manages to grab another title, he's one of the leading candidates, along with Violet, for greatest of all time kind of people.
Oh, yeah.
Because Choi Obin has accomplished so much over the course of his career. He was good when he entered the league, he was excellent throughout his entire time in it, and he's won stuff to be able to back that kind of claim up. So here we go. A lot of different subs happening all over the place, but I'm not going to walk you through each one of them. I'm essentially just going to summarize it by saying we are back to the same rosters, the same comps are expected as we saw on Oasis 2. These are the rush rosters that these 2 teams want to field, with Kai and Pelican facing off against Striker and Nero, and Super obviously in that main tank position as well. King's Row coming up next, man. Is there a more quintessential rush map than King's Row? Both of these teams are so good on hybrid. It's just where it's their bread and butter. Who the heck is gonna win here?
There's so much up in the air, and if you look at the forward as well, at the future, Havana is another map, which we're going to get to.
Yeah.
The teams are 1-1. No one's winning this map off of King's Row. Another rush map, typically. You see sometimes some differences between the way teams generally approach it, but for now, King's Row, yeah, I got to agree with you. Josh, it is just synonymous when it comes to the rush compositions. I mean, it's almost the perfect map for it. These tight corridors, the streets of King's Row really do just kind of, not necessarily force, but it definitely do amplify those kind of compositions and what they can get done. And both of these teams so far, it looks like the Atlanta Reign are the ones who have a better understanding of how to run it.
Only just, though. They squeaked out the win over the San Francisco Shock on Oasis, and the Shock replied back with a pretty good win of their own on Volskaya. So we are dead even in this series so far. And I want to do another check-in just when we're talking about these teams making it to May Melee knockouts, which are happening this Sunday. They're happening tomorrow. The Shock need to win. If the Shock win, they're in with Dallas as well, right? They go 3-1, they've booked their way in. But Atlanta have now dropped the only map that they can afford to drop. They cannot drop another map in this series, otherwise they are not making it to May Melee knockouts. That's a guarantee. So even if Atlanta close out all the rest of this series, it's still a crazy tiebreaker scenario. But that's their only shot. That's their only hope of making it to these first tournaments that are happening for the May Melee.
Atlanta Reign going to be putting everything into this map. So will the Shock. They obviously want to be facing off against Houston. That's what they've said in the interviews. Nero saying, you know, they've got their eyes on Houston as the team that they want to beat. Yeah, I can see the Hangzhou coming out to play once more. We've seen it a lot so far today. Once more, the battle between Kai and Striker here. Hangzhou.
Yeah, there we go. Striker finding that pick on Pelican, who was just isolated in the middle of the control point. That's going to signal the go, but the San Francisco Shock move forwards. That Immortality field was down before it even came up. And Gator gets it demolished immediately.
Oh my god! Okay, well, talk about an entrance. You know, we were bigging up the Shock and just saying, you know, the Atlanta Reign have got an edge on the rush comps, but those opening pickoffs, that's what really matters. And that's honestly the tale that gets told on this point A of King's Row. The Hangzhou players are typically the ones who are going to be the ones setting the pace and the expectations for how it's going to be going. Now we're in the streets phase. An early advantage for the Shock here is they're going to be using the Amp Matrix. Gator just trying to roll around the corner here. He's taking a ton of damage and it forces out the Immortality field very early on. Massa gets split up from the rest of the team and he's taken down early once again.
Isolated by the Amp Matrix and taken out. That is disastrous for the Atlanta Reign. They have to give up all of this space and the Shock are going to continue moving forwards. Kai actually had an advantage in terms of the damage he'd done up until that team fight, but now Striker leapfrogs him and they have earlier access to this Dragon Strike. Here it goes, Striker putting it in, Maywaller Gator's back as well. Kai responds with one though, and a lot of the Shock are getting weak here.
Yep, they're falling super low, and then you can see that Super's just caught out of position. Kai as well, putting in that consistent damage. A huge Dragon Strike from Kai was able to split them up earlier on in that team fight, and then nobody can follow up on Super's damage or help him with the heals necessary.
Yeah, I think the other crucial factor too is that they just didn't have anybody scouting where Kai was coming from. He came from a bit of an off angle inside the I don't know, what is it, a fish and chip shop or something, and they were able to launch a Dragon Strike just down a different avenue. Violet didn't expect it. He wasn't sat inside his own Immortality field and ends up dying. Talk about off angles, this is one. The San Francisco Shock have flipped the map.
They have rotated positioning all the way around here. Gravitic Flux is used early. Gator now using the Earth Shatter, and now the Blizzard from Pelican. It's going to lock up a lot of these players. FD God, again, not close to the beat to try and counteract this and take this fight further forward. The Atlanta Reign with 2 pickoffs. Now they're going to be looking for a couple of more. Still, the Shock trying to turn this fight. You can always trust the Shock to try and at least turn the fight into their favor. The Immortality field gets forced out, but Violet goes down. The wall comes through, but not enough to save Nero as they're just bounding onto their opponents.
That is the sign of a great team, utilizing their ults to try and turn things around. Unfortunately, when it doesn't work, it looks like they've been completely wasted there. And the Shock have used a couple of ultimates towards the end of that they would love to have back. But when you're at that kind of quality that the Shock have been in the last 2 seasons now, I mean 3 if you include this one as well, you always have got to believe that you can take unwinnable situations and turn them into winnable ones. And the Shock still have some decent tools here. Both teams with access to multiple support ultimates. So Amp Matrix is likely to be traded here. Maywall's come out to try and block stuff as well. And the Shock, both teams actually using the sound barrier, but Hawk already falls.
Yep, Hawk going down early there was a critical move. You can see the damage being pumped through. Look at that Dragon Strike cutting straight through the Atlanta Reign. And it forces them forwards and backwards right into the grasp of the San Francisco Shock. A couple of players left standing, but they will fall eventually. That was, again, you could see the kind of chess moves that were happening from both of these teams. You use Amp Matrix, we use Amp Matrix. The Ice Walls go up, okay, who's going to get the better positioning off the back of it? But the real key piece, the thing that won them that, the Dragon Strike coming through, and Kai has just built up one of his own.
They are definitely going to want to contest this objective. They're going to try and get back as quickly as possible. Dragon Strike already used on a bit of an off angle there. And Pelican's getting close to this Blizzard. That's going to be the key to locking it out. On the other side, I'm taking a look at Choyobin. Oh, there goes Violet! Snipe from Pelican across the map! And Shock are going to want to back up here. Choyobin definitely not going to use his Gravitic Flux. Okay, I was talking about them using ultimates to try and turn unwinnable situations into teamfight victories, but that is not one that you try to take. You wait until things are scrappy and you have a chance. You don't just straight up take a 5v6. This does, though, buy them time to be able to get Nero's Blizzard online, so things become somewhat even here in this engagement, except that Atlanta have access to this high ground.
Gravitic Flux being used, as Choi wants to try and connect it onto a few targets now. It's going to be Gator who's caught up. A lot of ults being used, but the high ground now going to be gained. Gravitic Flux used on the other side of things. Choi, very low. And Matrix from Violet, but a Blizzard is already locking up these players. And what an Earth Shatter from Gator. He's able to find the targets necessary to try and turn this team fight around once more. With a minute on the clock, the Atlanta Reign again just holding on to their positioning.
60 seconds.
And there's that team fight combo that we saw used so much earlier today with the London Spitfire. The Gravitic Flux slammed down into a Blizzard on the floor, and Hawk managed to keep his high ground positioning that entire time. That was monumental. So decisive. And here we see Massa 15% ahead of FD God in terms of that sound barrier. Could be pivotal here as well. If Massa can do some aggressive, decisive engagement off the back of that, could be the key to victory.
Wow, Super ends up battering them off! What was that? Oh my goodness, a couple of hammer swings, knocks him off the high ground and steps it up for the Earth Shatter. What a critical play. They were not expecting that in the slightest. And the shock just to seal it out. FD God lets the sound barrier go. Massa also without one of his own. It means they just about get the checkpoint. That was ridiculous. I don't know if that was a combination boop with him and FD God, getting them onto the low ground, but the instant reaction from Super to recognize that he could get the Earth Shatter off then was just ridiculous.
Yeah, FD God definitely used his boop to be able to push them back into that position as well. Choi open there on a May wall, looking for a bit of a high ground off angle as well, but they've isolated him, completely boop him away from the Immortality field. And this is a team fight reset for the Shock. A minute on the clock here. And the Atlanta Reign, despite the fact that that last team fight didn't go their way, they're still looking good. Oh, wait. That could provide an opening. Shock's respawns are extremely quick here. Striker comes up with the goods again.
Yeah, I was about to go on a tangent about how good this is for the Atlanta Reign to hold the Shock here with such little time, but Striker opens it up again. And you can see another Dragon Strike, and he's in position. He's trying to set himself up now for potentially the Dragon Strike to cut across and again push them forwards and backwards at the same time.
They have so many good ults here as well, Brent. They're going to be able to get up to a Flux Blizzard combo, and they have the Amp Matrix, which Violet can just lay down on the high ground. There we go. There goes Violet.
Yep. The Amp Matrix is going to again force Atlanta Reign backwards. The card's going to get pushed in. Oh, the Gravitic Flux, look at this, straight into the Dragon Strike once more, into the Blizzard as well. The Atlanta Reign, what have they got to answer? Well, Pelican's Blizzard is going to do a ton of work here, and it's made the fight even. Nobody was pressuring Kai, and Kai from the high ground once more. The Storm Arrows come through, needs to get this kill onto Striker, and he will do just that. It was looking so good for the Shock there, but the Atlanta Reign knew exactly what they needed to counteract it.
Extremely good defensive play there from the Atlanta Reign. The Shock were in complete control of high ground positioning. They had big ultimates to be able to work with, and Atlanta read exactly what was going on, repositioned themselves perfectly, and their players spread out and were able to take different angles. Pelican with a huge Blizzard, and Kai just mops everybody up. Kai is such a fantastic player. He doesn't play the same flashy style as other people. He just focuses on getting extreme amounts of damage, always being in the right position at the right time. And yeah, he makes percentage plays. They pay off. They do pay off.
It's such a good way to describe him, I think, as a player, because you do find him always in typically the right position for the job and regaining the high ground control, pushing them off. The Atlanta Reign have now been put in a position where they can see what they need to do to win this, and it's arguably not that difficult. I mean, I'm not gonna say that they've already won the map by any means. The Shock are not gonna just, you know, be pushovers here, but the Atlanta Reign can definitely taste victory within their grasp. And remember, they've got to win this map. They have to win this map.
Yeah, they're looking at a four-way tie. Some crazy stuff that Overwatch League admins are going to have a real fun time figuring out. But the Atlanta Reign don't care about that. That's their only avenue into the May Melee knockouts. I was worried about that for a moment there. Kai, he sometimes hits those. Just for a moment, hopping on the Widowmaker to see if he can get an opening kill. And now, mirror comms, both teams opting for the Sigma, opting for the Hangzhou.
By going for the kill here on FD God, takes a bunch of damage with the Storm Arrows. Close attempt. They're trying to fight around this card here. FD God, that early damage that was applied, set him up for the kill. FD God, I believe, got booped down as well. Now the Shock, they've lost Super. They've got to back off past this choke point. The forward hold not paying off.
Atlanta Reign are exceptionally good at being able to find individual weaknesses in how the Shock is set up. You feel like normally the way that these comps work, you're putting up melee walls, you're trying to kill the opposing Reinhardt or attack. Instead, these teams are thinking about it in such a different way, you know? FD is putting himself in aggressive positions because that will help the Shock, but he also puts himself in a risky position that then can become a potential weakness to be punished. And the Atlanta Reign do that expertly, absolutely expertly. There he is again, up in the high ground, dancing around the window. Exactly where he wants to be.
Oh, here we go.
He's going to be trying to contest Kai if he goes up into that area and tries to raise damage down from above.
Oh, the Amp Matrix is down, the walls as well. The Immortality Field instantly goes down. Pin against the wall here, Gator. He's low, he's weak, but it's Violet who goes down, and look at that damage. Gator letting the Fire Strike rip through the Amp Matrix. 2 kills for him. It's a clean sweep here in this team fight now for the Atlanta Reign, pushing this one forwards. They're going to have ults to boot.
I think the whole of San Francisco were expecting Violet to stay alive there. He had the Amp Matrix, they were looking to respond with it, and instead Pelican sniped him from across the map. Icicle, Pia, and Violet falls. I think Pia is exactly the noise it makes, actually. And now yeah. Atlanta have a ton of ultimates as well to keep this momentum going.
Matrix laid down. Choi wants to use the Gravitic Flux, actually. He's catching the positioning, and look at this! Straight over the ice wall. They're trying to follow up on all this damage. Choi at the off angle now as well. They're going to be trying to push Choi out of position. With Striker down, it means that, again, the Shock have lost a key piece, a key component to this potential hold. The Atlanta Reign more than happy to just, okay, we'll wait it out. We've got 4 minutes, and now we're going to be taking the 6v5 fight.
Yeah, Pelican killed Striker at the beginning of the next one, and there it is, the Flux into the Blizzard combo again. Catches Nero, catches FD God, Super falls as well. And the Atlanta Reign, they're patient when they need to be, and then they know when to turn it up. The tempo is fantastic. Their control of that, beautiful. And they take checkpoint B and add 5 minutes in total to that time bank. It seems inevitable now. The Shock would have to pull out some magic to stay alive on King's Row.
You're going to have to see some huge plays come out from the Shock to try and save themselves here. You know, this map, we often say, you know, this is the Shock's playground, but right here, Dragon Strike comes through. Almost a boop attempt's coming through, but no one's really capitalizing here, and Super's been caught out of position. Another great ice wall. The players have fallen, and now they don't even have to get the full completion here, Josh. The players are tumbling one after the other, just snowballed. The momentum is behind the Atlanta Reign. And they are so close now. That red box, that's what they're aiming for. Will there be a contest from the San Francisco Shock? They have to get bodies onto it. They're struggling. They cannot do it. The Atlanta Reign taking away King's Row. Taking the series now in a 2-1 fashion. So close to closing this out.
Electric play from the Atlanta Reign. They are almost perfect when it comes to these rush compositions. They know exactly what the Shock want to do. Their ult combos are fantastic. They apply an enormous amount of pressure to their opposition. And the rotations are all excellent too. I've got to give so much credit as well. Not just the entire team system is really good for Atlanta, but individual players are also stepping up. Kai is able to put down so much damage, but to me, Pelican has been phenomenal throughout this series too. His Brigitte on Volskaya, despite the fact they lost it, was insane. And then also on this map, the amount of picks he got with icicles across the map, taking down Violet, and in the next team fight, Striker, built all of that momentum for Atlanta.
You know, I called it back. You know, I wanted to cast people's minds back to 2019 when the Atlanta Reign upset the Shock then. I may have cursed it. We're about to find out on the other side of the break. Will the Atlanta Reign be able to close it out, or are the Shock going to be taking it the full distance? We'll find out soon. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
Welcome back, everybody, and yeah, it's shaping up to be a good one, isn't it? 2-1 currently the scoreline for the Atlanta Reign, leading in a series against the San Francisco Shock.
Yeah.
Whoo! I mean, what a way to set the tone, I think, for what is this, our last May Melee Qualifier match as well? I mean, it's kind of ridiculous.
It is absolutely ridiculous. And Bren, I just want to hit you with some little statistics here as well, as we head into what could potentially be our final map of this match. The Atlanta Reign so far this season, despite having a negative win rate overall, are undefeated on hybrid maps. They've just done that by winning against the San Francisco Shock as well. They're 4-0 on it, because they've been essentially just playing Rush on them all. They've got 2 wins on Eichenwald playing Rush, a win on Blizzard World playing Rush, and now a win on Kings Row playing Rush as well. Our next map type coming up is Escort, and they have a 0% win rate so far on Escort. And so you might be thinking, if you're somebody who looks into the stats, oh, well, you know, Havana, no chance. They don't have a chance against the old San Francisco Shock. But crucially, you have to look at what comps end up getting played there. Because the maps where they lost are Gibraltar and Dorado, where you play a lot of the double bubble dive. Havana is not the same as those at all. It really isn't. It plays in a completely different way.
Absolutely.
So this is extremely different here coming up.
Yeah, and we've been seeing Kai on the Hangzhou this entire series long. A lot of Hangzhou play actually coming out, a bit of a resurgence over the course of this week. It'd be interesting to see the stats in terms of seeing it being played over the McCree in these rush compositions, but you can see the numbers this guy's putting up.
Time, right?
Yes, yeah, it's definitely kind of feeling that way, and very low deaths per minute. That's the most important stat for me when I'm looking at this. It means Kai is in the right place at the right time, always playing the percentage play, as you put it, Josh. And he's certainly been doing that. It's been honestly heating up tremendously, and I love that you pointed out that the next map we are going to be going to is Havana, because it's a big ask. You know, if you're only looking at the statistics, if you're a statistics Steven, then you're taking a look at it and you're thinking, well, okay, probably going to the map 5, but you know, we've seen a lot of rush compositions coming out on Havana, and some teams are just made and broken at that initial spawn point. It can be a brutal map to try and attack on.
It certainly can. Also, you've got to remember that this was where Shock and Outlaws finished their incredible series previously on Havana.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're still waiting on a couple of the players, so let's take a look at the comms check of this week while we wait for them to get into their seats.
Dalton.
Yes. Yes.
Leave your t-shirt down.
What? Let me show my cleavage or something?
No, the one.
Huh?
I hear this like ringing, like this.
Yeah, Bird, I trust your pick for whatever, okay?
Torbjorn?
No. Not Torbjorn.
What?
I don't trust you. I trust Birdwing's pick.
What?
Smoke signal is also kind of crazy on the subject of technology. What do you think about it?
What? What are you saying?
Not really. Not really.
I think it's cool.
I just want to play, man. I'm gonna rage.
Ow! Back. I did nothing.
You look good while you did it though.
Nerf this.
I would want like a toddler just for like the sake of it would be funny. Like
You're like, yeah, don't feed it or anything.
I don't know about that.
I can just see Fry like dressing it up exactly like him, matching clothes and everything, walking down the street.
You definitely had a baby carrier thing.
No, I had a baby backpack. My dad would run with me and back.
Oh, explains a lot.
That just doesn't make sense.
Your brain will probably bounce all over your skull.
You like Lester's a scary guy.
You can
His
be a bit
voice
of a
is
troll
so
sometimes.
deep. His voice is so deep.
Yeah.
But he could take my hand and just throw my own hand into my own face, you know?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
And then I'm down crying.
Oh, he was Valiant too.
That's my ex-teammate. I'll show him who the better tracer is.
Focus point.
Break down. Oh, God! No, you need to see what just f***ing happened. Did you get right-clicked? Look at that! Oh my God! No, bro. Right, you guys got this. Good luck.
Welcome back, everybody. And yeah, the players, as you can see, they are settling down in their seats. Shock, who are, just taking out a bit of extra time to really discuss, okay, what is going on here? Because this is a team that kind of made out, I think, over the course or the lead up to this series, that really the only team that they had their eyes on was Houston. From the sounds of it, and the kind of outcome to that, they were sort of saying, any team that stands between us and the Houston team when we get to the knockouts is going to be crushed. Well, that has not happened here today. The Atlanta Reign have capitalized off of that, and they are currently leading 2-1 in honestly a ridiculous fashion. This is something that no analyst was really predicting.
And this is why you've got to respect the competition that's happening at the moment in North America. There's no top dog right now. At the top of the standings stands the Washington Justice, but they themselves look like they have some potential holes in their game that others might be able to exploit once we get to the May Melee. Shock are the defending champions, but they've already been proven that they bleed with that loss against the Houston Outlaws. And the Atlanta Reign, we heard so much about them coming into the season when it came down to their rush compositions. And so far, we haven't really seen them play against another top team on a map pool that favors that style. And this really does. Oasis, you can play it for sure. Kings Row, Havana, Nepal, if we end up... well, we can't... there is one world in 14 million where we draw on Havana, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But even that, had we got there, is a good map for them as well. And I think it really does bear noting how much map pool plays into this too. The stats that I was talking about with them having 100% on hybrid and 0% on escort, there's no bigger indication of a play style and a compositional variance to a team like Atlanta than a stat like that. And this is where they're going to look for their first win on escort so far this season. Havana, like I said, it plays so differently to all the others. Rush is going to get played here, potentially by both teams on both sides. And the Shock are the ones that actually have to adapt. Weird to say that, but it's true.
Yeah, scenario that we weren't really expecting at all. And a reminder as well, if the Atlanta Reign take this away and they win with a 2-map lead, I believe it sets up the 4-way tie scenario. So it sets up a massive headache. So Atlanta Reign are basically, they're trying to set us up for the overtime scenario almost, because this broadcast will be going long. If you're a fan of the drops and the rewards, you want Atlanta Reign to win this so that the broadcast goes that little bit longer. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just excited to see more history made here potentially on Havana. Thinking back to that Shock Houston game and how insane it was. With Shock getting the full hold and then Houston getting the fuller hold. It's just madness what occurs on these rush mirrors on Havana.
Yeah, the map kind of plays towards it, and now you can see the teams are clashing again. Wall goes up here by Nero. Not being forced out of position. Gator gets locked up. The Immortality Field saves Super. He backs off with his team as well. They're going to do their best not to lose any more players, but it is a clean start for the Shock here. They come into this rejuvenated, and now they're going to be looking to move this car forwards. A great sign for the Shock, winning that initial team fight so early on. Not going to be losing too much time here, Josh.
Not at all. And already showcasing the reason for the McCree pick over the Hangzhou, the flashbang there being crucial in order to isolate the target and set them up for that. Is Atlanta going to go for the speed boost on the high ground? They've already got Hawk looking like it, baiting it, but Gator actually goes in aggressively, trying to... I think they're just trying to bait the engagement out of the Shock as a counter, to be honest. And Gator gets out of there real quick.
Yeah. That's a great Ice Wall from Pelican to try and block off that Amp Matrix. Forces the positioning back. It gives the Atlanta Reign at least a moment to think, and now the Amp Matrix goes through, but Shock would have dived straight through it. Not enough, though. Fire Strike connects onto Nero, and that was amplified again. The damage comes through, and not enough. The Shock tried to play proactive into that as soon as the window was laid down, but yeah, getting caught out of position and off guard.
Yeah, and also Choyobin got demec'd at the beginning of that fight. Atlanta went aggressive, they postured aggressively, and then they immediately retreated, trying to suck the San Francisco Shock into that kind of power vacuum. There's another pick as well.
Okay.
Kai coming up with the goods here. And this is the advantage of the Hangzhou over the McCree, is that in the longer range fights, the Hangzhou does reign supreme most of the time. Striker really wants his team to close the gap, to be able to brawl, make use out of the flashbang.
And this is where we see the Shock get chewed up and caught up last time. Gravitic Flux is going to be used here, and the Dragon Strike. It combos excellently into it, and look at that wall. Pelican, so many little elements coming together for the Atlanta Reign. It blocked off the line of sight, and the sound barrier from FD God didn't connect onto Super to save him.
And neither did the Immortality Field. That was the backline of the San Francisco Shock getting neutered with a single May wall. Pelican has been phenomenal in this series. His icicle damage has been fantastic. He's been able to generate picks for them. The blizzards have been excellent. The walls as well. He is a menace right now.
Oh, Blizzard gets used. Deadeye from Striker. He had to let it go early because he was about to get frozen up here, and Super just trying to hold the flank off. Gator ends up going down here, and that opens it up now for Super to lay down the shatter. 2 players hitting the deck. The Shock eventually find their opening, and they are going to be jumping on it. 1 minute remaining. It was getting a little bit squeaky there. The Atlanta Reign, they may have an opportunity to contest this one. It looks like they're trying to square up potentially to the doors. Maybe trying to go for a last-minute contest.
There's only a couple of meters left and nobody's in position. Hawk was one of the last people to die, so his swap over to the Diva was late. Wasn't able to get there in time. And Massa as well. But Atlanta Reign have the high ground here, so not a disaster for them, but still. The San Francisco Shock, with 3 minutes on the time bank, can be happy that they've secured checkpoint A. It can be one of the most difficult areas to bypass on Havana.
Yeah, this high ground control, so important. And with Gator's Earth Shatter, a lot of pressure on Super to try and block this one up. The bomb gets sent in with the ice wall. It destroys the Immortality. The charge comes through. Gator is in trouble. Has to charge his way out of there. And as this was going on, look at this team fight. It's gone the way of the Atlanta Reign. Kai finding a lot of value. The Dragon Strike forced the positioning back of the San Francisco Shock. And now these Storm Arrows, a ton of work being put in as the D-Mech onto Choi Hyobin, unable to convert it onto a D-Mech onto Hawk.
He was
He's
so
gonna get
weak.
out. Yep, and that's going to build up the Amp Matrix now for the Atlanta Reign.
It certainly is. I've been so impressed with the disengages from Atlanta. Normally we think of them as an incredibly aggressive team, but most of the time these team fights are coming off the back of luring the Shock in and then crushing them when the Shock overstep their boundaries. Here's a speed boost Deadeye to force Atlanta off the high ground and gives all of this positioning to the Shock. Atlanta are already starting to rotate, so they've still got really nice positions for people like Kai, but Gator isn't with them.
Yeah, nobody's really ready for Kai off on this off angle. He's just pumping in the arrows. The Amp Matrix comes down for the Shock though, and they did catch Gator out of position. The Amplification Matrix damage, a little bit too much to overcome. And they are going to win out this team fight, slowly but surely. A really good sign, honestly, winning this team fight here. It means they're probably not going to get held up too much at this final point. There may be an opportunity though for the Atlanta Reign to contest at the last minute.
Maybe, but it's going to look brutal if they do. Atlanta have got some decent ultimates, but they just can't get into the payload to contest it quickly.
Yeah.
And so now, this is a pretty large time bank. As Havana goes, 3 minutes to be able to push point C is large. And the Shock have just kept up all of this momentum from point A.
The Shock want to play into this. The Amp Matrix goes down. Most teams will look away. But the Shock's just going to be gliding straight into them. Now the Blizzard is going to freeze them up. The sound barrier is going to be met and answered as Nero lays down his own Blizzard, and it's locked up to players. It's a better series of events now for the Shock. The ultimates came out in the correct order, and they're the ones who have come out on top.
Absolutely dominant there for Shock, making huge value out of the sound barrier to push past the Amp Matrix. And another great wall from Nero. Both of these Mays have been playing spectacularly. As the Atlanta Reign look to recontest, they don't have that speed boost Deadeye to be able to make space for them. They don't have an Amp Matrix either. So what can they really do here? A Dragon Strike would be good once Shock get close, but here it comes, speed boost Deadeye. Atlanta are going to try and meet it.
Okay, Gator going to get taken out by that Deadeye, but the self-destruct is going to be returning at least something. Striker goes down and nobody can really get Kai off. Eventually he's going to be rejoining his team over the bridge. Stormhour pushing a player or two off, but Iris will fall. And Kai's the last one standing here. Everyone very low on the side of the Shock, but ultimately it's just going to be feeding the war machine that is Violet. Building up that next amplification matrix. He's pretty far off it, but the Shock are rolling in deep here, Josh.
And rolling is the right word. They have just kept this going the entire time. They had to use an immortality field inside their own spawn doors there to be able to stay alive. Kai with a pick. That could be decent. Atlanta are flooding out of spawn, but their tanks are still so low.
Yeah, Kai's been offered a lot of space here, but he's got to do some heroics for sure. The D-Mech comes through. Okay, the Blizzard's going to be locking up a couple of these players. Super gets caught, but so does Hawk. Hawk locked against the positioning, and look at that. Swinging away, the Shock are finishing with 56 seconds in their time bank on Havana. A ridiculous time to be meeting, all things considered. You got to remember back when this team was playing against Houston, they were getting locked up at checkpoint A.
And suddenly, things look awful for the Atlanta Reign. Remember that a victory here is just not enough for them in terms of the May Melee. Sure, they'd love to put a win on the board and set themselves at 2-2. But if they win by only one map, if this goes to a 5th, the Atlanta Reign are not making the May Melee knockouts. They will not be playing tomorrow. So the San Francisco Shock have set themselves a spectacular time to both get back into this series and deny the Atlanta Reign the opportunity to play in our tournament. A minute in the time bank, it almost seems like it couldn't happen. Atlanta just didn't stabilize at any point here.
Yeah.
The momentum from the Shock kept going. Super, always so aggressive, and Atlanta could just never catch it. How do they replicate that? How do they beat that? Surely the dream is dead at this point for the Reign.
They're not going to be giving up just yet on the attacking side of things. This is a team that, I mean, they went toe-to-toe with Shock. They beat them on King's Row when they were playing the Rush comp. They're more than capable of setting a reasonable time against them. We may be going a distance here, but it begins at the spawn door. As we've seen so many of these matches start before, the Shock are going to be looking to just stave off as much time as possible right here, right now. And the Atlanta Reign going to be hoping and hunting for opportunities. You can see Kai again on the Hangzhou, laying down the rockets from, oh sorry, I should say the arrows. Sometimes they can feel like rockets. Straight into them, chunking them down. The immortality field goes down nice and quickly here. Choi falling pretty low. They're backing off now. Strike is the one who opens it up first. Iris falling. No more Batiste.
Gator's on holiday. He has gone off all over the place there. And all they need is a single pick on somebody on the San Francisco Shock. That's what they're after. If Kai can land a headshot, that will open the door for them. But the closer that Shock get to all of these ultimates, the more they can keep this defensive snowball rolling. And just keep the Atlanta Reign penned inside of their own spawn doors. Violent and Matrix gets used. Kai's got to be the difference maker here. There it is!
Yes, we've seen this so many times before. Kai on the off angle, and he's found the one pick that really does matter. Yes, the Shock are going to be winning this team fight, but ultimately, Striker's going to be running back from the spawn door, and it's going to leave Atlanta Reign with a 6v5 scenario now to take this team fight.
And they have to be able to convert this. The Shock are probably going to invest ultimates to try and buy time for Nero to, for Striker to come back. And here it is, Nero's, whoa! The Blizzard immediately backed up into a corner, and they use the immortality field.
Oh my god! What is that? Laying down so many ultimates, caught into the corner. The Atlanta Reign somehow find their way on top, but now the Dragon Strike comes through. Not enough. Nero still alive, still putting in damage. And Striker, last one standing, just needs to get the beat down onto Gator. Finds the headshot. Are you kidding me? Finally put down as Gator connects the kill. But look at the time bank. A scrappy win for the Atlanta Reign. Yes, there were ultimates traded out, but 2 minutes. That's what the Atlanta Reign have been forced down to, and the card has only just started moving.
Striker makes the move over to McCree, and that indicates to me that they want to move very quickly up this staircase and contest the payload again. Extremely quickly, close the gap, get into McCree range and stop the payload at all costs.
Nero, another wall, laid up with a gravitic flux. You can see Gator swinging into them, and it's going to combo with the Dragon Strike. Sound barrier laid down as well. The Atlanta Reign trying to snowball this one. They do not want to get held up at this corner.
They used everything there, Brent. Gator shattered FD God and Violet in the backlines, and they still invested Gravitic Flux, a Dragon Strike, and the Sound Barrier to be able to win that. And Shock are still going to be able to recontest here. Atlanta, I think they got a bit too greedy with that. Or not greedy, I mean they just used too many ults.
We're going to see what they can do here against the amplification matrix. Choi builds up his self-destruct here, and Violet's just putting in that consistent healing and damage. Now the sound barrier to meet this blizzard. Self-destruct comes through, Gator gets caught out of position. The immortality field, I don't know if he just got caught out of it or what, but he eventually will fall, and it has bitten the Atlanta Reign into the backside. They were hoping that they would have the momentum if they committed all those ultimates in the previous team fight. They were hoping that it would be enough to secure checkpoint A, but they may have just spelled their own defeat.
Check this out.
Atlanta would be devastated to lose this map here. Full held on Havana. The Shock did it to the Houston Outlaws. And this time their attacking round was excellent as well. They already got that in the bag. Shock have so many ults to be able to use here. Speed boost Deadeye pushes the Atlanta Reign back. Kai tries to respond with a Dragon Strike, but it's in the completely wrong direction. Nero with a Blizzard has caught up so many people.
Yep, and Gator's getting slowly frozen up by that Blizzard. And now 15 seconds remaining. The Atlanta Reign are fully wiped out. The Shock begin to just slowly approach. You can see Striker is just trying to just square up to the spawn doors here. 6 seconds left. It's up to Massa to try and contest, but they already knew he was there. The Icicle gets sent straight into him. Seconds away. Nobody can touch. And it ends with a whimper here. So the San Francisco Shock are going to be taking Havana, and ultimately it will mean that the Atlanta Reign, I believe, cannot qualify for the knockouts tomorrow.
That's right, because it's 2-2 and we're going to a 5th map. Crazy situation now that we've got on our hands, because Atlanta have to keep that mental fortitude and remember that a win is still a win. That's 1/16 of your entire regular season right here, right? You can't lose focus. Just because you haven't made it into the May Melee, you still need to try and close this game out against the Shock. And for the Shock themselves, they absolutely want to win. To go 3-1 into the May Melee knockouts would be massive. And again, sets them up for that potential win against the, or potential match against the Houston Outlaws that they've been so craving.
What a ridiculous turn of events in this series. 2-2 is going to be the scoreline, and ultimately, as we've been saying, it means the Atlanta Reign will not be able to qualify for the knockouts. Still hunting for that win, though, over the course of the season. We're going to find out if they can get it against the juggernauts that is the San Francisco Shock on the other side of the break. You know you don't want to miss it. See you then.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
It's all coming down to this. Both these teams so evenly matched. The Shock versus the Atlanta Reign, and it's 2-2. Unfortunately, in terms of the knockout predictions, in terms of for tomorrow, the Atlanta Reign were hoping to win this one out. But unfortunately, the way the mathematics works, the way it all squares up, it will mean that they do not qualify tomorrow for those matches. And the Shock, they do breathe a sigh of relief, but it's not over just yet. Got to hammer that home at the end of the day, because these teams are playing for a little bit more than just the opportunity to obviously compete in that May Melee tournament. They're obviously competing for the overall season, and that's where this match is really where the stakes are lying.
And that's what's so important for Atlanta to keep in mind here, because so much of their mentality coming into this will have been, let's 3-0 the Shock. And after they got their first map, they'll have been feeling fantastic. After Volskaya, they'll have said in team communications, right? They'll be saying to each other, don't worry, we can still make it. We can 3-1 them. After the Havana loss, it's so important that they stay focused, because these 5th maps are the hardest to get against the San Francisco Shock. This is a championship team. They have been pushed to the brink many times before. Their most recent championship, when they played against the Seoul Dynasty in the finals, they were still pushed to the very limit there as well, and they came out on top. Playing against the defending champion in a 5th map of Nepal, it's going to be more of the same when it comes to Rush. But it's all a mental game now. I really believe that. It's all about how much Atlanta can keep their heads in it, and how much the San Francisco Shock want to win. How hungry is this team?
I think the Shock is a team that's going to be looking at that. See that 2-1, that one loss to Houston. It's a blemish on their record. They're not going to be happy with this one. The Atlanta Reign need to be hunting for these wins. If you can get a win against the Shock early on in the overall season, that's absolutely massive. It's so big. It brings you even. 2-2. All good in the grand scheme of things. You've got to be thinking also the long term. I know it's easy to get into that short-term mentality when we're so much focus is on the tournaments, but at the end of the day, the grand finals is the grand finals. In a year's time, people aren't going to be talking about the May Melee. They might every now and then when they're talking about the history. It's going to be about the grand finals, the overall impression. And that's what is on the line here in this 5th and final map. Both teams going to be rolling out, and they're both playing the rush comps still. Seeing which side is going to be coming out on top now. You can see Super just trying to get cheeky there with a fire strike over the wall. Not able to do much. Now the speed boost comes in. Kai putting in so much consistent damage. And a big flashbang actually connects onto Pelican and Hawk. Stops them in their tracks for the time being. The Shock looking for an opportunity to try and press the advantage, Josh, but they're not quite finding it yet. But now they might just.
Both teams have already used their immortality field, and Iris with such a fast Amp Matrix comes out before Violet. That is a rarity, and they catch Striker on the flank as well. Gator may have overstepped himself slightly, and Violet invests his own Amp Matrix to try and clutch this one up. Are they really going to be able to turn this? Surely not. Atlanta Reign have the point. They just kite LOS, the Amp Matrix, and the Shock are going to try and push back in here. This is aggression from Shock.
Yeah, I mean, it's unusual as well. They're at a bit of a disadvantage here. I mean, they've already point not flipped over into their favor. They want to be taking it fast, though. Already Super going to be playing out of the line of sight. The Blizzard gets 8 up there. They thought they could play off the back of this one. Hawk, again, a massive play coming out from him. The freeze comes up as Striker can't really output too much damage into the back lines, but he's going to be back with them now. And it still looks like just inevitably the Atlanta Reign are going to be the ones coming out on top here, just slowly but surely grinding out this teamfight win. And again, it feels like a bit of hubris here from the Shock. They're just unwillingly, like, not wanting to really let go of any sort of team fight. Always believing that they can turn it, that they are the best in the world.
Yeah, but for so long they have been. And so that's a very understandable mentality. Deadeyes on either side here. How do they deal with this? There it goes, eaten up by the defense matrix. That one not quite, did a lot of damage to Massa, and they forced out that the immortality field and clean up so easily. What a play from the San Francisco Shock. They come back into this, but they've already given up 80% almost.
Yeah, a lot of, obviously, percentage given up here. The Shock, they get off with only, I think, Super dying, and Super's going to be back into the fight momentarily. Back with the rest of his team. The Atlanta Reign just teasing whether or not they want to take the high ground approach. Instead, they're going to be opting to go into the lower section. Maybe a speed boost through. Obviously, Choi is going to be able to read this pretty early on as they're trying to go through.
I'm looking at Nero here. He has the Blizzard. The previous one got eaten up by Hawk. And Nero's looking for an opportunity again.
Yeah, he is. He almost has this Blizzard. Now you're going to see them swinging into one another. Again, the self-destruct. The Shock are going to be using it. So much space being created by both of them. And the Blizzard being committed by Pelican. Not going to be getting anything done. It was, again, Nero with his own Blizzard getting really a lot of the work. Just locking up those players with the crowd control. The Atlanta Reign, okay. Well, they still have an advantage when it comes to percentage, but ults-wise, what are they working with? May be able to get this Amp Matrix online at the same time for this re-engage, but the Shock have got one of their own.
Look at FD God's position as well. So high above these guys. Looking for some kind of boop, perhaps? Yeah, seeing if you can isolate a target. There goes Pelican onto the low ground. Not going to be with them anymore. That could be a big advantage, actually, for the Shock. And so they've got to wait. Atlanta with a speed boost and a Deadeye here again, making space.
Yeah, Kai just going to be leading this one in. He got a lot of shield damage onto Super. That could be critical. It breaks it. It forces out the sound barrier now as the team wants to stay back into it. And Matrix traded out on either side. Super taking so much damage. And look at that. Violet just about escaping out of the line of sight of this one. Still, the DMEC comes through. Hawk using the self-destruct to try and basically stay back into this fight. He gets the remake off. The fight's still alive. Nobody's really pressuring Iris. And he's putting in a tremendous amount of heals. But heals is not enough to win the team fight. The Shock overwhelm them as the Blizzard gets laid down once more. And as the overtime burns, the players cannot withstand. They can't stand toe-to-toe with the Shock just yet. And round number 1 is going to be going their way.
I'm sure a lot of people thought after Atlanta played excellently on Oasis and Kings Road that there was a new best team in North America when it came to the Rush comps. But San Francisco Shock is here to tell you that you have made that decision too early. The Kings are still in town. San Francisco absorbed that aggression so well there. And they kept Super and Choyobin alive when Iris didn't have exactly the same focus in the middle of his fight. Despite the fact that they got a better sound barrier and a better immortality field coming down, Atlanta tried to overstep themselves and really capitalize on that and turn it into kills. And with Super just backing up the entire time, they baited in Gator. And that was an enormous difference maker in that final team fight. Now we see a bit of a different compositional choice here. Choyobin moving over to the Sigma, so he's going to provide a shield for Striker's Hangzhou to play behind. Whereas Atlanta still playing very bunched up, very fast-paced this comp.
Striker had a bit of early damage here, but you can see just playing on the far right there on the high ground. Striker's just trying to find a kill or two, maybe with the arrows. Atlanta Reign have to play this so carefully. Now the speed boost comes in. What a boop! That is incredible. FD God, he made his name off the back of plays like that, and he stopped the push before it even begins. The immortality field is going to keep him from dying just yet. Another boop off the edge. Pelican not going to be able to survive that one. But FD God, what a way to set things off.
You can tell as well when you just look at him and how he's bouncing around in his seat. The young Frenchman's feeling it. He's got so much impact from that team fight. Finding himself at 50% of the way, basically, to a sound barrier, and just a guaranteed win there for the San Francisco Shock. Gator dunked in the drink immediately, and Atlanta are forced to mirror the comp now. Sigma, Hangzhou, they're playing slowly. FD God is so high up here and looking for it again. Doesn't quite get the timing.
You never know. You just never know. You have to be so careful. You're playing against this. I mean, the Lucio players can get so high up into the skybox on this particular section of Nepal. All the way up there. Now the point's going to start to get contested, and it is that slow play that you were talking about, Josh. The Hangzhou players just trying to send over those arrows from afar. A lot of damage being put out. Striker goes down. That's an icicle to the head. Can't out-heal that one. And Matrix used in response here. Violet does not want to be ending this fight just yet, putting down a lot of shield pressure. In fact, both teams ended up using this Amp Matrix, and it's Choi who's going to get punished. Forced out of position. He goes down early. Super now. He's going to be gliding across the point here. He charges in. Nero still trying to turn it as well. The Icicle onto Kai will make it potentially winnable. The Blizzard with the Dragon Strike, a lot being committed, and look at that. Clever usage of the Ice Wall to give Gator a bit of respite onto the point, and eventually it flips over to the Atlanta Reign.
It does. The San Francisco Shock are still managing to find picks here, and Pelican feels forced to invest his Blizzard into this one. He is isolated with Gator underneath the point here. And unless Kai can make some magic happen in the backline, the Atlanta Reign are getting picked off from all sides. And that was...
Oh my goodness.
It felt like Atlanta had gotten the advantage by being able to take down Choyobin. They found a pick onto Striker, take down Choi, and that unlocks the point for them. But unfortunately, all that does as they stream in there is create a situation where the Shock have taken control of all angles and are peppering the Atlanta Reign with damage as they take the objective. Shock are phenomenal at that. And now Atlanta stare down the barrel of losing this series after being 2-1 up.
Navarre Matrix Gator just going to be cleaving through that one. The point is getting flipped here. No one's actually contesting this one with 96, and the Shock want to be taking their fight slowly but surely. The Gravitic Flux comes through, but Violet goes down early, and that is imperative. Now the sound barrier is used, but as the aggression comes in, Gator connects two with the Earth Shatter. Not enough though. Trading out, the Lucio players are getting a ton of impact now as they're trying to close it out for their teams. Not enough. The Atlanta Reign holding on to this one. And they just cleanly end off the team fight, which is what they're looking for here now with 45% and counting. They have an opportunity now, but it's so tight. One more team fight. If they lose it, that is it. That's the series.
But with both sound barriers traded, Hawk now has a huge opportunity to devastate San Francisco. Atlanta might look to play aggressively here. That is a massive Dragon Strike, though. It splits Atlanta Reign in half. Kai tries to reply, but there's FD gone again with a boop on a Pelican. But here it comes, that Gravitic Flux.
It's been flipped!
Oh, it's not enough!
99% and counting. The overtime goes for the Shock. They just knew the answers for it. They knew the Dragon Strike Gravitic Flux was coming through, and they managed to find a way out of it. The overtime goes down, but no one will be able to touch, as it is going to be the San Francisco Shock winning this series 3-2, and you can look at the players there. They knew it was not easy. They were expecting the Atlanta Reign to go down without a fight, but they definitely were thought tooth and nail towards that finish line.
And you can say, yeah, that it was a close loss, and Atlanta Reign played well, but look at the devastation on those guys' faces. They came in here with one idea, that they were going to 3-0 the Shock. And they were good, but they weren't good enough. They miss out on the May Melee, and they miss out on a chance of being able to secure an extremely vital win. The Atlanta Reign are going to finish the opening portion, the opening quarter of this year, 1-3. That is not how Atlanta wanted this to go, and that's not how their performance would indicate they are. For the Shock on the other end, though, if we focus more on the positives, those guys are well on their path to rematching the Houston Outlaws. But I gotta say, Brent, even with the fact that they're putting up the wins, and even with them looking more fierce as well in these matches, they are still mortal. The Kings can bleed, for sure.
Oh, yeah. I think the narrative as well, Josh, that people are going to be running with is that the Shock... So this is what happened last season, and this is what people were expecting. The Shock lose a couple of matches, and they go on to dominate. I don't think this is the same case anymore. The teams, the competition has been elevated in North America across the board. The Shock are no longer the guaranteed top team. They actually do have real competition, and it's going to be showcased, I think, in the entire season all long. They do walk away with a win here now, and as we go into our player of the match presented by Xfinity, of course, we could have given it to a lot of different players, but there was one, I think, that was just consistently standing out, and it was Choi Kyobin. The plays from this guy really were... I don't want to say it's an individual team effort, I think, because the entirety of the... Or sorry, I don't want to say it's an individual's effort, because it was really a team effort, I think, for the Shock to overcome this and end up taking this series. But the consistent factor, for sure, has to be Choi.
You could apply that same concept to the whole history of the Shock. The consistent factors who are always in there, always performing, are Violet and Choi Kyobin. Especially with the loss of Moth recently and his move over to the Los Angeles Gladiators. They rotate their DPS, they rotate Super and Smurf, but the core of this team that are in all the time, it's Choyobin and it's Violet. And Violet recently has been swapping around his role and stuff as well, so yeah, well deserved. And like I said earlier on when we took a look at his resume, this is one of the candidates for greatest of all time players. When you look at his accomplishments, what he was able to do when he was playing in Tier 2 and how good he looked down there, but more importantly, what he's been able to do with the San Francisco Shock. This guy has just been the definition of consistency.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the guy just turning up, and he's going for the 3-peat as well, of course, with the rest of the Shock. if they can get the three wins in a row. I mean, there's a lot of people rooting against them. The Shock have definitely become the villains of the Overwatch League in a certain way. But I think either way it goes over the course of this season, it would be quite special. I think just in any sort of outcome, if the Shock end up taking away another grand finals, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I'm getting ahead of myself anyway. I'm getting ahead of myself because what is coming up after this one, of course, is a little break. But after that, the Watchpoint desk is going to be breaking down the matches at hand. And we're going to be looking forwards as well to tomorrow. The knockouts are beginning. So don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you soon.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
Welcome to the Watchpoint Post Show presented by IBM, and we are joined here now by Twilight from San Francisco Shock. Twilight 선수 안녕하세요.
Yeah.
Alright, I am going to jump right into my questions. Question number 1 is, we see you and Violet being subbed in and out for each other a lot, and being you and both you and Violet being the top tier support in the Overwatch League. What is the San Francisco Shock subbing strategy for you two? 트와일렛 선수와 바이올렛 선수가 좀 이제 경기 도중에 살짝 이렇게 좀 교체되는 상황이 많이 이루어졌는데 둘 다 어떻게 보면 리그의 최고의 힐러로서 센족의 두 선수 교체가 어떻게 이루어지나요?
뭐 자세한 거는 이제 저희 팀의 내부 뭐 이런 것도 있고 해서 말을 못 해도 그냥 민기가 에임 너무 좋고 그래서 딜로 잘해서 민기가 딜러를 하고 그냥 제가 하나 잘해서 하나 한다는 단순하게 생각하면 그러게 되는 것 같아요.
혹시 뭐 이렇게 뭐 맵이나 뭐 이런 거에는 뭐 그런 것까지 들어갈 수가 없고
말하면 혼날 것 같은데요?
말하면 혼날 것 같아요?
네, 말 잘
알겠습니다.
네.
죄송합니다. 네, 알겠습니다. Alright, so yes, alright, so Twilight says that he can't really get into specifics because of strategy-wise and team-wise, so he can't really get into specifics. So he does apologize. But Violet has really good aim, and if you look at it that simply, he does these days switch over to DPS, and that's when he comes in. And when Violet goes into DPS, he comes in to take that spot. So I did follow up with the question, like, is that anything map specific? And Violet or Twilight told me that that's part of the strategy as well. So he can't really tell me, and he's afraid that Krusty and the team's gonna get angry at him. So he apologizes that he can't actually go into details. And it's alright, Twilight. 괜찮습니다. 죄송합니다. Sorry for asking you specific questions like this. Alright, second one is a lot more chill, a lot more easier. You guys are going to be going up against Dallas Fuel tomorrow for the knockout rounds. Is there a weakness that you are looking to exploit for tomorrow's match? 이제 내일 예선전에 달라스 팀과 만나시게 될 텐데 되게 좀 승리를 위해서 좀 눈여겨보신 달라스 팀의 약점이나 뭐 이런 게 있을까요?
댈러스도 경기를 많이 챙겨보긴 했는데 잘한다고 생각하는 팀이고요. 근데 이제 약간 라인 컴프 쪽이 좀 저희가 더 강하지 않나. 그래서 그러게 딱히 문제될 건 없을 것 같아요. 저희가 이길 것 같은데요.
Okay. Alright, so I've been watching a lot of Dallas games, and they are in fact a really good team. But one thing to note is Twilight says that San Francisco Shock will probably do better when it comes to Rhine compositions. So he feels like San Francisco Shock would probably win the match tomorrow in the knockout rounds. Alright, Twilight, thank you so much for the interview, and let's head back to the desk. 감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you so much, Twilight. Thank you so much, Danny. We're now taking a look, one last look actually, at the Western region May Melee standings. So now we see it's complete. We finally figured it all out. No complicated math there at the end whatsoever. And we do see which teams are actually qualifying for the knockout round. So they're not in the May Melee tournament yet. That's right, they still have to play the knockout rounds tomorrow in order to qualify. So still a lot on the line, still much excitement, and this is how the Western region knockout bracket is going to look like. That's right, so now we also added the seed, San Francisco Shock, who just played. They're now the